Good morning, friends, and welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. It is an absolutely perfect spring morning today. So I think it's the perfect day to take you on a little garden tour. So this is going to be garden tour number 3 of the 2023 gardening season. I'm sticking to my plan to be a little more regular with garden tours and try to do them a little more frequently so that you guys can really see the progress of everything as it grows. So we are going to start today out here in my new garden expansion area. As you can see behind me, well, Milo's decided to join us on this tour. So as you can see in the bed behind me, these potatoes have sprouted really nicely and are looking really good. So let's take a closer look at those. So over here, these potatoes that look kind of gangly and have those really long stems, those are the gold potatoes we planted together that were really highly sprouted. And so far, aside from the excessively long stems, they're looking pretty good. They've leafed out really well. They look nice and green and healthy. So I am hoping that despite their kind of rocky start in life, that they're going to end up doing really well. So I've got some little nasturtiums. Hello, Milo. Want to say hi? So I've got some little nasturtiums and some other little companion plants popping up in between. Now over here, these potatoes that look a little more normal, I guess. These are my red potatoes. And there's one spot in the back there where that one hasn't sprouted yet. So I'm going to keep an eye on that one. And okay, I just found something really concerning. Something has been in my garden. I'm going to have to do something about that because I did have a potato over here too, which must have been dug up. So thankfully the rest of my potatoes seem fine. So I'm not sure, whatever it was, I don't know if it actually was going for that potato or if it just stepped in the garden. But I'm going to do a little digging and see if that potato's still there. But either way, that is definitely a reminder that I need to go ahead and get the fence up around this garden. This garden is not fenced yet. So we've actually been making a lot of really good progress with this garden. As you can see, I'm going to take you guys around and show you all of the progress that we've made. But garden season has been getting really busy, and I've been busy with planting, not to mention everything else that I have going on in life. You know, we have busy lives, and the progress on this garden has kind of slowed down a little bit. But that hole over there in the back is reminding me that I need to prioritize getting the fence up around this garden. So a quick little update to the potato drama. I actually did dig around, and the potato is still there. So I don't think anyone was digging in my bed. I think what happened was that Milo walked through it, left some big footprints there, and basically just caused a crater in the bed, but the potato is actually fine. So I filled it back in. Nonetheless, I am still going to go ahead and get this fenced in as soon as I can. All right, so you can see we have the arch trellis here. Nothing's planted on this yet, but this will have winter squash on both sides of this trellis. Then over here in this bed, you can see I have a tiny minuscule tomato plant there and a little bit bigger one there. And this is going to be a little bit of a hodgepodge bed. You can see how the onions are doing along the edge. These nasturtiums came up and are looking really good. Got some bachelor buttons flowers started. Got some chamomile. All kinds of sort of random little things in this bed here. So this bed is ultimately going to be the garlic bed, but since garlic doesn't get planted till fall, for the meantime, I'm kind of filling it with a lot of random things. I put 2 cherry tomato plants over here because I always have extra cherry tomatoes that need to find a home somewhere. So those are in there. I put the onions around the edge and there's some Swiss chard in there. I've got a lot of companion plants like chamomile, calendula, bachelor's buttons flowers, and I'm going to keep adding more as the season goes on. Oh, I've got a lot of carrots in there too. I don't know if I showed you guys that, but we have some. You can see they're just sprouting, but these are carrots kind of mixed in. Some of these things are weeds that have grown up. I planted a lot of random stuff though, so I wanted to let all of the sprouts go a little bit. See, these are actually chamomile sprouts here. I wanted to let the sprouts go a little bit until I could identify them because I don't want to accidentally pull out something that I planted. Over here, you can see these are more carrot seedlings. These are golden carrots, so I'm really excited about those too. Now across the path is a strawberry bed. You can see these strawberries are leafing out really nicely. Planted these not too long ago as bare root strawberries, and they're really coming in well. I've got some calendula here, carrots, more carrots. I just kind of am throwing things in wherever they fit. There's a bush bean coming up there. So I wanted to add some companion plants along with my strawberries to really make the most of that space, but I didn't want to go overboard and crowd out my strawberries too much. So hopefully we struck the right balance there. We'll see as the season goes on how big those strawberry plants will get and how the companion plants will do with them. So I did sprinkle some bush beans throughout there. I sprinkled a few carrots throughout there, plus some flowers. You can see I've got a couple borage seedlings that sprouted. Those really attract pollinators really well. And then I think I've got, yes, over here I've got another one coming up. So we'll have some good variety in this bed too. Now, one piece of progress we have made in this garden, as you can see, we now have all 3 of these arch trellises installed. We just got that done recently. I'm really excited about that. So I already told you guys that this one here is going to be winter squash. I'm thinking it's going to be a butternut squash and a honey nut squash. This trellis here will be Chinese noodle beans. I think I'm going to do a mix of red and green, and those should look beautiful. And this one in the front here, I think I'm going to do melons on this. We'll probably do mini cantaloupes and Kajari melons here. Now I have the final bed here. I've lined it with hardware cloth. You can see we kind of just quilted that in. It's patchwork. But this is ultimately going to be a second strawberry bed. For this year, it's going to be another hodgepodge, which will probably end up being mostly tomatoes. And speaking of tomatoes, I went to a local nursery yesterday and grabbed a couple of these because these were varieties that I did not have. So this one here is a specific variety that I was seeking out. It was hard to find seeds for it. This was recommended to me by a friend who lives right down the street. So I figured if it grows really well in their yard, it'll grow well in my yard too. And this one is called Cindy's West Virginia tomato. Now, as you can see, this is a huge transplant. I did accidentally damage the stem in transplant, so I'm trying to do a little bit of medical tomato intervention and try to get that to kind of heal up. We'll see how that goes. Even if it doesn't heal though, everything below this tape is completely fine. So even if this top part dies, we'll still have a great tomato plant. And then this one here was sort of an impulse buy. My daughter found this tomato and really wanted to try it, and I can't say I blame her. This is the pineapple tomato. I've never grown this one before, but this is a pretty well-known heirloom, and it's supposed to be delicious. So we're going to give this one a try this year too. So this bed here, for the moment, is empty. This is going to be sweet potatoes, but it's not quite warm enough for them yet. So look at this. I was out here yesterday, and I found this, and I am so excited about that. So our asparagus is finally sprouting. If we go down the path here, I know I've got some weeds mixed in here, but here's another tiny little asparagus sprout. And over there is another one. I don't know if you can see that. So it's going to be a while, of course, before we can actually harvest this asparagus, but seeing that it's starting to come up and is actually alive is great progress. So I'm so excited to see that. So here's kind of an overall view of this garden here. You can see we finished the wood chips along the side and in the back. Basically, there's just one little corner here that still needs wood chips for the walkway. And then this little bit under the trellis here. I think I'm just going to end up covering that with wood chips too. So down here is my sort of interesting solution to this leveling problem with the stone wall. So you can see I kind of built up the ground here and made a brick, almost a mini retaining wall with a little walkway on top of it. And then in this little area here, I've pulled out all the weeds and I'm going to be planting herbs there. So I'm hoping to plant some herbs along the edge there that will kind of spread and take over and discourage weeds. I was thinking some creeping thyme might be good. Lavender, I don't know if that'll really do that, but it'll look pretty. So if I put a mix of herbs like that, that's my hope that this will actually work out somewhat okay. Again, I'm still open to suggestions on that. So if you guys have any other suggestions for how to make that area work and just be the best possible with what I can do with that situation, go ahead and let me know. All right, so we're going to head on over to the main garden, but I just wanted to give you guys one last look at this beautiful creeping phlox. As you can see, it's sort of on the way out now, but it's still beautiful. And take a look at my nice fluffy lemon balm while we're over here. This is looking really good, and it smells really good too. Our red raspberry patch is really filling in nicely, and we should be getting, it'll be a little while till we get raspberries, but we should at least be getting buds pretty soon. I don't see any yet. So if you remember when we pruned these together, we pruned these back pretty seriously, and they basically just look like little twigs. Now you can see the difference with how well they filled in. So hard pruning really doesn't hurt raspberry bushes. It's pretty important actually to prune them to keep the canes under control, I think. So these are actually going to be a manageable height. Now, of course, the new canes that are just coming up this year that are going to yield in the fall, those will be a little wild and crazy at first, but we'll prune those back too once we get a harvest from them. Now over here, there's some other potatoes that are looking really good. These are some more of those yellow potatoes that were really sprouted, really tall, and I didn't want to get rid of any of them, so I put the extras in these pots here. And you can see these are actually looking incredibly healthy, so I'm hopeful that we'll get a nice harvest from these potatoes this year. Right, we're going to head over to the main vegetable garden. Figured I'll give you guys a little look at our fire pit area as we head over there. It's a little bit wild here. I don't really maintain this too precisely, but you can see we have lots of creeping phlox. And this is also the area where the blueberries are. So as you can see, blueberries are flowering. This is still a really small blueberry bush, so I don't think we'll get a lot of harvest from it, but any little bit will be a nice treat. And then in the back, there's a few more blooms there. So we have 8 blueberry bushes over in this area, and it looks like we're probably going to get harvest from 4 of them. Now it's going to be a pretty small harvest, but it will definitely make a nice snack. And the fact that they're starting to yield makes me really hopeful that it won't be too long before we get a really big harvest. Hopefully next year we'll get harvest from all 8 of our bushes, and the 4 that yielded this year will yield even more. Just wanted to take a minute to show you guys this beautiful peony while it's blooming. And looks like we got a little spider friend in there. This just started, and I love these deep velvety petals. They're really pretty. So this peony is actually a complete mystery variety. I ordered peonies a few years ago, and this one was just included in the bag as an extra bonus, so I have no idea what it is. So here's the main garden. You can see there's still a lot of empty space, but the space is starting to fill in. Now here's a look at our peas, and a few more peas here. So I apologize if you hear yard work in the background. As I said, it's a beautiful day, and my neighbors are all outside doing yard work, I think. So you'll probably hear a little bit here and there. Hopefully you can still hear me and enjoy the tour throughout that. So as you can see, we've got lots of peas here. These are looking really good. Peas are one of those vegetables that when you put them in the ground, they seem to grow so slowly for so long. It just seems like it takes weeks and weeks and weeks for them to even grow an inch. And then all of a sudden, once they get to a certain point in their growth, they just seem to shoot up. And then before you know it, you actually have peas. Once they flower, which I don't see any buds yet, but I don't think it'll be too long with the height that these are. I think they'll actually be flowering pretty soon. And once they flower, it's really just a matter of days till you actually have edible peas. They develop really fast. So I will say I don't have conclusive. I'm going to wait to make a final verdict on the pea soaking experiment until we actually get a harvest from these peas. But I'm going to say so far, based on my observations, I don't think it makes a huge difference. If you have experience with that, especially if you have a different experience than I've had, I definitely would be interested to hear about it. So you can see the peas are coming along nicely all along the fence here. So we have these both on the outside of the fence and the inside. So there's still quite a few areas in my garden that haven't been planted yet. I am working on starting some companion plants around the edges. These purple alyssum here, I actually purchased these starts from a local nursery. This is a tiny white alyssum that I started myself. I didn't start any seeds for purple alyssum, only white, and then I found that I was kind of craving a little more variety. So I went out and purchased some purple alyssum at, I can't remember where I got them. I got them somewhere locally, and honestly, they were already flowering and looked so much more beautiful than mine anyway, so I couldn't really completely resist temptation there. Now in here is my broccoli. You can see that my trees have dropped their little pollen clusters there. So we're going to go ahead and uncover the broccoli and sweep those off. But they are looking really good. So broccoli is one of those plants that does grow really fast as long as it has all the nutrients that it needs. So as you can see, there's a pretty big change between these and the garden tour a couple weeks ago. So this biggest one is a Romanesco broccoli plant. I cannot wait to try that. So I actually have 2 Romanesco. I did have a third, but this little one down here just shriveled up seemingly out of nowhere this week. So I don't know if maybe some pest ate the roots. I'm not sure exactly what happened to that. So broccoli actually, to me, is one of the most satisfying plants to grow just because it gets so big and healthy looking as long as you feed it enough. Broccoli does need a lot of nutrients. I find it really is hungrier than a lot of other plants that I grow. But as long as you give it that and keep it protected from pests, it really does grow really well, and homegrown broccoli tastes so good. So I am really excited to get to harvest this. It'll be a little while still, but I'm really looking forward to it. Now you can see I've interplanted a lot of lettuce and other greens in with my broccoli. And I do that to make the most of the space because, you know, when you first start the broccoli, it's pretty small. And eventually it's going to be even significantly bigger than this. And then this lettuce will get shaded out, which will actually be a benefit to the lettuce because lettuce really does not appreciate summer heat. So this conserves soil moisture for both the broccoli and the lettuce, prevents weeds, and gives me a bonus harvest. These little seedlings that popped up here, I think these might be a volunteer of some kind. They almost look like snapdragons to me, so that's my guess. I've been leaving them to see what happens with them. But if anyone has any guesses about these seedlings, let me know. Do you think they're snapdragons or are they something else? So every year I have a few mosh plants that go to seed, and they're little tiny rosettes of plants until they go to seed. Then they get wild and crazy, and I actually think these flowers, these little white delicate flowers, are really pretty. But these are going to reseed themselves all throughout the garden. And if these plants want to do the work of growing themselves and planting themselves, I am more than happy to let them. Mosh doesn't take up a lot of room. There's really not anywhere in the garden that it would be inconvenient for it to be. So I'm just going to let it spread its seeds and then harvest it wherever we find it. So despite the cover that I have, the netting I put on these, something has been eating these here. I think this is pak choi. I know it's some type of Asian green. So I'm not sure what's been getting in here and eating this. Must be some kind of ground-dwelling creature because, as I said, I have had this covered with netting. Now this bed here, you can see that I have amended this with compost and this is prepped for planting. So this is going to be peppers in the front and tomatoes in the back of the trellis. Last year I made the mistake of doing that opposite. I put the tomatoes on the front and the peppers on the back. And what happened is the sun kind of comes from the front, and so the tomatoes, you know, tomato plants get really huge. They ended up shading out the peppers, and my peppers didn't do really well. I think there were a variety of reasons why my peppers were not super successful last year, but probably the biggest one was the fact that the tomatoes really shaded them out. So this year I'm switching because peppers don't get as tall. They won't shade out the tomatoes. So I'm hoping that we'll have better success this year. So that garden bed is amended and waiting for tomatoes. Now I did plant out some of my cherry tomatoes already, but we actually have a really cold night forecasted a few days from now. Originally when I planted out the tomatoes that I did plant out, that night was supposed to be in the 40s, but now it's dropped. Yesterday I actually said 34 degrees Fahrenheit, which is dangerously close to freezing. This morning I checked again and it's gone up to 36, but I'm going to monitor it. I do have a plan in case we are going to get a frost that night, a random late frost. I do have a plan to protect the tomatoes that are planted, but I'm going to wait until after that night passes or unless the forecast changes significantly before I plant any more frost tender plants out. So over here, you can see the garlic is looking really healthy. Now this isn't really going to do anything except just grow larger and stronger for a while, but it won't be too long before down in the middle of these plants here we'll be getting a garlic scape, and I'll show you guys that when it happens. That's really exciting. Usually sometime in June that happens around here. So for now, we're just going to keep the garlic going, and honestly, garlic pretty much grows itself. It's a very easy vegetable. So if you're new to gardening and you're looking for an easy vegetable to grow, garlic is definitely one to consider. It's so easy. It is one of the few vegetables in my garden that pests actually really don't even care about, so I don't have to worry about pests with it. All you have to do is plant it in the fall and just give it reasonably fertile soil. It's beneficial to mulch it a little bit to conserve soil moisture and just to protect it over the winter, but honestly, it's so easy. So in the fall, when it comes time to plant garlic, we'll talk about that in a little more detail. But in the meantime, just know if you're new to gardening, garlic is the way to go. So over here, my radishes are looking good. These actually could be harvested now. You can see how nice and big they're getting. And I actually am going to harvest these, I think, in the next couple days to make room for more cherry tomatoes. You can see that I do have some cherry tomatoes planted over here. So you can see that these cherry tomatoes I'm growing in tomato cages. I don't really recommend tomato cages for large slicer tomatoes. The plants just get really too big and the fruit's too heavy for this support to really be enough for the most part. But I do like to use these cages for cherry tomatoes. The plants do get big and crazy, but they don't really have that heavy fruit, and so I find if they kind of sprawl a little bit, it's really okay. I also don't prune my cherry tomatoes the same way I prune my large tomatoes. I kind of let them go a little bit crazy. So these are the tomatoes, or at least some of the tomatoes I mentioned that I had planted. Of course, when I planted them, the forecast looked much friendlier than it does now. So I'm hoping that it will warm up and we won't get dangerously close to a frost. But if it's forecasted to be anywhere in the 30s or maybe even the low 40s, I'm going to come out and cover these. And if I do have to do that, which hopefully I don't, but if I do, I'm going to share with you guys what I do to keep these safe from frost. So I've got 4 different varieties out here so far. This one is a Berries Crazy Cherry. And this one, you know, has like a tiny little bit of damage on the leaves, but overall this plant looks really nice and healthy. Over here, I've got a Red Centiflora cherry tomato. Here we've got a Sun Gold, which is my classic tried and true favorite. And over here, I've got a Rosella tomato. So I really like to grow a big variety of cherry tomatoes, well, tomatoes in general, but especially cherry tomatoes. I like to be able to harvest a really colorful basket of tomatoes. I think it just makes it a lot more interesting. It'll make a salad a lot more interesting, and we eat a lot of cherry tomatoes in the summer. So these 4 varieties are all different colors here. We've got Berries Crazy Cherry, which is kind of a pale yellow. That one's new to me. Actually, the only one in this whole section that I've grown before is Sun Gold, which is my all-time favorite cherry tomato. So delicious. That's kind of a deep golden orange color. The Rosella is sort of a smoky purple color, similar to like a black cherry tomato. And Red Centiflora is unsurprisingly red. So I'm really excited to see how all those do this year. Now I have around them, you can see there aren't really any companion plants here yet, but I have sowed seeds for lemon gem marigolds and some basil surrounding these tomato plants at the base, and I'll probably transplant out some seedlings as well. Once I harvest out all those radishes, I'm going to put a couple more cherry tomatoes over here too. So lots of exciting stuff happening. Now you can see we've got peas and one very excited cat. So peas growing on the inside of these fences as well. So here's my mixed brassica bed. You can see this also has fallen prey to the tree pollen. So we're going to pull all these off, and I'll take the cover off and I'll show you guys what we have going on in here. So I love the look of a mixed brassica bed. There's just so many different shapes and textures and shades of green, little bits of purple. I think that it just is really pretty. So we've got a few kinds of kale here. This is Dazzling Blue. This is a lacinato kale. You can see it's got a deep bluish green color with purple veins, really pretty. This is a red Russian kale, or also called Ragged Jack. You can see it's got a little bit of the purple red veins too, very curled. Got a couple cabbages down here. I've got, this one's a Savoy cabbage, and I've also got some early Jersey Wakefield with the smooth leaves. Kind of nestled in here is a blue curled Scotch. You can see very curly leaves. This is a nice deeper green. And then here, this is some kale from last year that you can see is bolting, flowering, going to seed. So I'll probably collect seeds from this, and just to save for next year. Now over here is my cauliflower. I've got 6 cauliflower plants. This one's really puny. I'm not sure what's going on with that one, but the others look good. Now you can see I have a pair there that I never ended up splitting up, so honestly I probably should still do that at this point. So I'll probably keep that larger one and then cut out this little one here. This one looks beautiful. This is by far my best looking cauliflower, so I'm really excited about this. So down here I have one carrot plant that's left from last year. You can see it's bolted and it's going to seed. This is going to make a flower really soon, and then I will hopefully get some seeds that I can save from that. I think this is a black nebula carrot. You can see at the bottom it's got some purple coloring. I don't know for sure, but that is my guess about what this is. All right, so this isn't really the subject of this video, but I'll just mention it real quick since it's hanging here. The other day we collected and dried some herbs together in this hanging rack here, and I said I would update you guys. They've dried really well, so now I just need to bring them inside and infuse those into some oil to make a salve. Now over here is my mixed lettuce and green bed. And this always looks really beautiful this time of year with all the different varieties and colors. Here's Butter Crunch, my favorite. And we'll be able to harvest this really soon. It's got nice, soft, silky smooth leaves, so I can't wait for that. You can see my scallions are starting to go to seed. Scallion flowers are really delicious, so you can just sprinkle these on a salad if you want to. There's lots of different ways you can cook them, or else you can just let them go to seed and spread more scallions for you next year. Now in the back, that light green lettuce there is black-seeded Simpson. That one's usually really reliable for me, but this year it didn't germinate that well the first time. You could see it's kind of small and there's some sparseness. So I did sprinkle some additional seed, which is germinating now. So I think we will get a decent harvest of that. I do like to start that one really early in the season though, because I find that it does tend to bolt and go to seed earlier than a lot of my other lettuce varieties. So we'll probably harvest that as soon as it's really usable. And then some of them, like the Butter Crunch, usually last a little longer into the summer, so we'll have that. So here, you can see I've got some oak leaf lettuce, some super red romaine, which really is super red. That's really pretty. Here I've got Freckles, which the first seeding of this didn't germinate that well. I just got these 2 plants. So I sprinkled some more seeds, and you can see I've got some babies now. Same with this variety here. This is Gustav's Salad, which is another type of Butter Crunch. Merlot looks really good. It's just got to grow a little bit. Over here, I've got Marvel of 4 Seasons, which is a beautiful, I think it's a butterhead. It's really good and delicious, and it's supposed to hold up longer in the summer than a lot of other varieties, so I'm excited to grow that. Now this here is some type of butterhead lettuce that I actually grew last year. It overwintered, and I have been harvesting this. So it's really only that one plant that's harvestable size, so I haven't really been harvesting it for salads. I've just been taking a leaf here and there when I make a sandwich or a burger or something like that, and it's really good on that. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in the garden on this beautiful morning. This is a perfect spring morning, and I can't wait to spend this whole day outside. There's a lot of gardening projects that still need to be done, so I'm going to do as much of those as I have time for. Also, my son has a soccer game this afternoon, so while that is a commitment, at least we'll be outside for that too. So we're going to definitely soak in the sun and, as I said, as much fresh air as we can. So again, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I am really enjoying my garden growing, as I do every year, and I'm really enjoying sharing it with you guys this year. So I hope that you will come back and you will see these plants as they grow and see the updates. So I hope you guys are having a great day, and I can't wait to see you again soon. I'll see you next time.